Hello students, welcome back to Mrs. Miller's laboratory for the last time this school year. We'll be doing a little Le Chatelier's lab just to demonstrate how Le Chatelier's principle works. This will be the reaction that we'll be focusing on. So what I'll be doing is I'll be mixing some iron 3 chloride with potassium thiocyanate. This SCN is a polyatomic ion called thionate. And it's one that you did not have to memorize. It's going to form this complex. It doesn't really form a precipitate, but it forms a complex, an iron thiocyanate complex, and then the chloride ions and potassium ions are our spectator ions. Now, we'll be focusing more on this top equation where I've left out the spectator ions. The iron and the thiocyanate are yellow in color, and the complex is orange in color. So we could see where the equilibrium lies depending on if it's more orange or more yellow. So what I'm starting with is 25 milliliters of water, and to that I'll be adding some iron 3 chloride, the reactants, and I'm looking at my directions here so I know how I'm supposed to be making this. These would be the directions that you guys would have had in class. So I'm going to add about 6 drops of the iron 3 chloride. And then I'll be adding the other reactant, which is the potassium thiocyanate. And I'll be adding also about 6 drops of that as well. Oops, I added a little bit more than that. And we'll mix it all up, and notice that we do have a nice orange color. We're over here. What I'll do now is I'm going to pour equal amounts, or as close as I can, into each of these test tubes, and these will be my experiment chambers. I'll even it out as we go along. One test tube will be our control. In other words, I won't be adding anything to that, so we can compare the color change. And then the other ones I'll be adding something to them so we can see what happens as we go along with that. So these 5 test tubes all have the same substance in them. Not quite the same volume, but pretty close. This will be my control, okay? So again, this is sitting over here a little bit more on the orange side. To the first test tube, I'm going to add some iron 3 nitrate. Now I'd like you to take a minute right now. Which way do you think the reaction will go? Do you think it will shift to the reactants and turn yellow in color? Or will it shift to the products and remain orange or even turn darker orange? So I will be adding, how many drops? About 6 drops of this. Try and get the lid off. Getting it all over me. Okay. Now iron 3 nitrate is made up of iron ions and nitrate ions. And is it yellow? No, it's over here. So what happened? We added iron, causing the reaction to shift to the products. This is our control over here. This is my control. This is the new one. You can see we've gotten a darker orange in color because we're going further over onto the product side. In the next test tube, I'm going to be adding potassium chloride. So I'll be adding 6 drops of KCl. This is, again, my sample without anything in it. Now when I add KCl, I'd like you to take a minute. Which way do you think it's going to shift? Is it going to shift towards the reactants and turn yellow in color? Or is it going to shift towards the products? What happened? Let's look at our control. Is there really a change in color? Why not? Well, potassium ion and chloride ions are not part of this reaction that we're focusing on. They're both going to be considered spectator ions. They're not doing anything to the equilibrium. So they really did nothing. We'll set that one aside, keep our control up front. To the next test tube, what I'm going to add is I'm going to add some KSCN. Remember, that was one of my reactants. So I'll be adding the KSCN, and again, take a minute. When I add the KSCN to it, is it going to turn yellow and shift to the reactants? Or is it going to turn orangey, shifting towards the products? I just lost my directions. Wow, pretty evident. Again, here's my control. I'll put it on the same side as I did the last time. Okay, this was what I added the KCN to. Obviously, it's shifting over this direction to the products. Why? We added more of this. When you add more of this, shifting in the opposite direction. The last one I'm going to do is I'm going to add sodium hydroxide, a concentrated sodium hydroxide. Now, we don't see sodium or hydroxide up here, so you might think it might not affect the reaction at all. But what happens is the iron is going to react with hydroxide and form iron hydroxide. So it's going to form a precipitate. We're not going to be able to really see it as a solid, but it does form a precipitate with that. So with that in mind, what do you think is going to happen to this test tube? Is it going to turn yellow, or is it going to turn a deeper orange? I'll be adding 6 drops of the NaOH. Here's my control. What happened this time? Shifted in this direction, more towards the reactants. Why? Well, again, that iron was removed from solution when it reacted with the hydroxide, so we removed the iron. Okay, I hope that was a nice little demo for you guys. I will send the assignment out, and I hope you're having a great week and a great Memorial Day weekend. Bye.